Today we're going to take a more in-depth look at how Donald Trump is trying to reshape some of Washington's relationships with Latin American countries. The US has, of course, long taken a close interest in the events and the politics of Central America and South America, and Washington has a long history of backing coups in various countries as it attempts to either further its own interests or simply to try to stop problems in its what it calls its backyard, ending up on US territory. So to discuss all of this, I'm joined by Daniel Landsberg Rodriguez, who is a specialist in this area at Northwestern University in Illinois in the United States. First of all, Daniel Landsberg Rodriguez, thank you so much for your time. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me on the show.
Good to be with you. I struggle where to start. Donald Trump openly meddles everywhere in this region. How do you think, for an overview, would you characterize Trump's approach to these countries? What are his motivations? Is this about stopping immigration, stopping drug imports to the US? What is it all about?
Well, first of all, I think that you brought up, rightly so, the history of the U.S. as sort of the dominant player in the region. But what we're seeing right now is actually, I'd say, something that's quite new. The sort of idea that there's almost sort of an axis of affinity that's being created or that's being nurtured by Washington, in which countries that are a little bit Trumpier in terms of their leadership. And by Trumpier, I mean, right-leaning, but also a little bit more populist, a little bit more conventionally anti-institutional, they tend to get a tremendously better treatment under this administration than under previous administrations, dating back really to probably the 19th century. You're talking about, the Malays of this world who get bailouts in terms of their
Xavier
financial
Milei in
crisis.
Argentina.
Exactly, or Ecuador's Noboa, who's getting additional security aid and very, let's say, understanding treatment in his own relations with the IMF, or El Salvador's Nayib Bukele, who has become a bit of a fixture in Washington circles and is seen by sort of the right in Latin America as kind of a cause célèbre in terms of his strong-arm views on anti-crime. These are figures who are getting, contracts, they're getting bailouts, they're getting additional aid. But countries that sort of fall afoul of the United States are treated much worse than under previous administrations. And we're seeing that with Venezuela. We're seeing that to a certain degree with Colombia as of yesterday. We were seeing it for a while with Brazil when you had tariffs lodged against a major economy due to what their independent Supreme Court decided in terms of former President Jair Bolsonaro, who is seen as sort of a Trumpy figure, being condemned for rebellion. So I'd say it's a very different dynamic than really anything we've ever seen before. It's not about coercion. In the 19th century or the early 20th century, 1910, you had gunboats off the coast of Venezuela because former Venezuelan President Cipriano Castro had defaulted. They bombed Puerto Cabello, he paid up, they went away. This isn't that. There are gunboats off the coast of Venezuela now once again, but it's unclear what they want. There isn't something clear that Maduro could do, presumably short of stepping down, that would make that go away, because it's not about politics. It's nominally about anti-narcotics. And that's something that, can be declared a win at any time, but that also requires metrics. It's not binary. Which means that for the first time, really, the power of escalation is not in the hands of Latin American countries that may oppose the United States. It's in the hands of the United States, which is throwing a bit of a curveball for the Maduros and Cubas and Nicaraguas of this region.
That's really interesting. I was going to ask you about what he might do with what Venezuela might do to push back, but you've already answered that. Perhaps we can look specifically at some of those countries you mentioned, starting with some in the non-Trumpy camp. Colombia, what are the specifics of that relationship between the US or between Donald Trump and Colombia? And how important is the drugs factor, which is resurging in Colombia, as I understand?
Oh, it's quite important. The United States has stronger institutional ties to Colombia, really, than anywhere in the region, give or take Mexico, because of the trade element. Colombia has very strong collaboration in terms of security, in terms of anti-narcotics. It's been a big receptor of aid, and a lot of those institutional relationships, remain relatively strong. The issue right now is that the two presidents really do not get along. They're quite similar in terms of, both Gustavo Petro and Trump. They are sort of communicators first, administrators second. They live very active lives on social media, and very much in opposite camps. And they have a tendency to, distract from domestic stories that may not be very flattering or useful politically, by involving themselves or by pushing sort of external stories, whether that be Venezuela, Palestine. So they're quite similar in that regard, but they are at opposite ends. So a couple of weeks ago, you had essentially a decertification of Colombia as a partner in anti-narcotics, which comes with a price tag in terms of U.S. aid. But there was a one-year waiver that was granted to this, which basically at the time seemed like the United States didn't want to give up on those institutional relations, but they wanted to sort of put the country on notice. Colombia has an election next year. By the time that waiver ran out, you would probably have a new president. Gustavo Petro's not very popular. So it seemed like a bit of a forward bet on, if we can wait this out from the U.S.'s perspective. Now, because of some of the comments that Gustavo Petro has made in terms of both the gunboat diplomacy in terms of the sinking of some of the ships off the coast of Venezuela, one of which Petro claims was a Colombian fishing vessel, and then also some of the comments he probably, which was probably relevant, the comments that he made about Trump, specifically when he was in New York, that led to his visa being pulled, despite being the head of state of an allied country. That is something that seems to have changed that dynamic a bit. We're still waiting to see exactly how much there's going to be in terms of pain points for Colombia. It's very difficult to cut all aid at once, even though that's what was announced by Trump on Truth Social. Some of these are multi-year contracts. Some of these have legal protections. Some of these have already been paid. So it's unclear how much it'll really damage, but symbolically it is really, really different. And it's something that is really reshaping the region, because smaller countries right now are really incentivized to prove that they are part of this axis of affinity. You have to aspire. It's almost like a beauty contest. You have to aspire to be, in that Malay, Noboa, Bukele club. So if you are Panama, you are getting rid of Chinese ports. If you are Paraguay, you are a sort of changing recognition to Taiwan. If you are Dominican Republic, these are, center-right countries, but they're countries that aren't really Trumpy in terms of tone and style. So they have to sort of give an extra pound of flesh in order to make sure that they're on the winning side. Other countries like Trinidad, which has been very much a partner to Venezuela on essentially anything having to do with oil or natural gas for more than a decade, is being forced to choose between being with the United States and being with Venezuela at a time when Venezuela is uniquely weak. So now you have, a country that was very much sort of the junior varsity partner to Venezuela, helping the United States with some of these anti-narcotic logistics in the Caribbean. So you're basically, you're creating a binary choice. It's almost, if we look at sort of the old big stick diplomacy as having been coercive, this is not. This is actually a little bit more feudal. It's not about trying to make countries fear Washington. It's about trying to make make countries be more like Washington. And as we hit an electoral supercycle over the next 15, 16 months, and Peru's going to have a new president, Colombia's going to have a new president, Chile's going to have a new president, that dynamic, that promise that you will get more by being Trumpier is something that we expect to have a lot of impact in terms of how second round runoff dynamics work, in terms of how primaries work, and the types of candidates who end up, representing the right.
We don't have a lot of time, so if you can briefly, I was just wondering, how do you think all this is working out for the United States? I'm thinking, Claudia Sheinbaum in Mexico, he said, stop the illegal migrants coming in, or I will hit you with huge tariffs. They did seem to reach some agreement. Broadly, how would you say this is working for the US, this Trump foreign policy on Latin America? We don't have a huge amount of time left.
Yeah, I'd say right now it's been tremendously successful from the US's perspective, so I can't imagine them abandoning course anytime in the near future. Basically, you're having a lot of the smaller countries that were in Venezuela's sphere of influence because of oil diplomacy for many years have now come very directly back into the fold. And it's something that is basically reshaping the dynamic so that you might end up with a sort of larger, US sphere in which you have elites that are much more closely aligned to Washington, in theory, than even to some of their own people in their own country. It's almost a globalization of the US's backyard, but hemispherically divided or defined. So yeah, it's going well, and it's unclear really what is going to make them change course.
Okay. I'm afraid we're out of time. I wish I could talk longer. Really, really interesting. Daniel Landsberg Rodriguez there from Northwestern University with that very broad, big picture look at Trump in Central and South America. Thanks very much for that.